Here we go.
Thanks, Lena, for that awesome introduction, and hello, everybody. Yeah, so it's really great to have Dan here from the sort of building perspective, and also as a fabricator too, because he's recently started a new business making panels and installing panels. So yeah, the first slide here is the 10-star home. So some of you might have seen this, heard about this project. So it got quite a bit of press because it was probably about 3.5 years ago. We built 2 homes actually, and this was one of them. And yeah, that was really the start of the super home movement. And when we launched this, we used the sort of momentum and the publicity to launch the super home movement, which is really just about sort of open source sharing of ideas. And we think it's too important to hold on to trade secrets, and we just want to get the information out there. And my view is that by the time we've finished the one job, we've learned something, and the next job's better. We've moved on. So we basically give away all our ideas, which is what we're doing here today, hopefully, and hopefully some of you guys can benefit from this. So yeah, I guess with this project, it's enhanced sort of advanced timber framing in a way, and that's probably because we sort of looked at SIPS panels and different ways of building, and we decided with this project we wanted to focus on sort of mainstream, traditional, not too different from traditional building methods, and something that's affordable. It's a very compact home. It's a 280 square metre site, 70 square metre footprint. And we just wanted to show that an affordable home could be, for mainstream, could be high performance. So we used the GibFix framing system for this house. And this is a drawing just showing, you know, how that works. Some of you might have heard about this. It's actually not a new idea. It's been around for quite a while, but Gib have just recently started marketing this as a kind of system, and they call it GibFix framing. But you know, it was previously called Stud Saver or Frame Saver. In America, they call it the Californian corner. So basically, you get rid of the timber studs at the corners and at the internal wall intersections with the external wall. The insulation can go right past. So the red is obviously, you know, that's the amount of insulation we can fit in. So we're getting rid of thermal bridging. In theory, this should be cheaper because you've got more insulation, you've got less timber. And I think this house was the first house in Christchurch to have this framing, and it was really easy. And I just think it's a no-brainer, and I'm not sure why all framing isn't done this way. And it should just be the new normal way of doing it. So we went a couple of steps further. We took all the dwangs out, and except for essential dwangs where walls were joining and where we wanted sort of things on the wall like handrails or things. We made the framing LVL and 140 framing, and we got innovation points, which really helped with our Homestar 10-star rating. So yeah, back then, sort of 3-4 years ago, we were just learning about air tightness. So we didn't do an internal cavity and air tightness layer, but that's what we're sort of, that's our go-to method now, which yeah, we'll move on to that. But so I'll just keep moving. So this is just my little dig at the building code. You know, the most dangerous phrase in the English language. We've always done it this way. You know, for the last 150 years, we've been doing timber framing, and it hasn't changed a lot. So code, I guess, you know, it's the worst possible house that you can legally build, and we kind of, most people know that. 3 out of 10, and it's where we're at. 80% or more, probably a lot more, is built to code in New Zealand, and only 15% of homes have anything different than 90mm framing, 140 framing or something different. So why is that? I don't know. You know, it's prefab too. There's other countries have adopted prefab as a mainstream building method. Countries like Japan started prefab in the 70s, and Europeans too. And simply because it was better and cheaper, but that hasn't, it's been sort of a promise that hasn't come to fruition in New Zealand. Perhaps it's because of our volume, not sure. So yeah, there's a little animation here. I'll just see if this works. Yeah, so this is just sort of illustrating what I was talking about with the framing idea. So getting rid of these cold bridges. It's actually stronger as well as more thermally efficient. So we don't need these studs. We can fill the whole wall up with insulation. There's just a lightweight metal angle at the corner, which is sort of like a rondo type metal angle. Jib like it because it gives you the ability to screw into metal for your plasterboard fixings and less chance of cracking and popping and that sort of carry on. So that's probably all I've got to say about that. We'll just keep moving on to some more exciting things. So it's just me ripping out the dwangs, but these days we actually get them to deliver the frames without the dwangs in the first place. But that was fun, actually, going around and taking the dwangs out. So the other reason that we don't need dwangs is if we are doing structural cavity batten, and you know, you don't need dwangs for fixing claddings and things like that. So either a 45 or 40 mil cavity batten means that we don't require dwangs. So there's a few other things in terms of different ways of doing framing. You can do a double stud wall, or a sort of like an I-joist, I-stud. A T-stud is an interesting thing. I'll just see if this works. So I put a little link in here, but there's a few little videos linked to this presentation, but you know, if we don't have time, I think NZGBC, they'll share this presentation. You might be able to look back at the videos later on. So that one there's not working, but T-stud is kind of, it's not available in New Zealand, but it's sort of like it's a little bit like, if you can imagine a truss as a stud. So you've got two pieces of wood with foam, with it some webbing in between and a bit of foam. So super wall, I'll move on to that next, but just the other options are structural insulated panels, SIPS panels. So most people know what that is. It's usually polystyrene with some sort of board, OSB board, or magnesium oxide. Eco panel, Dan will talk in detail about eco panel. So it's kind of like a structural insulated wall system. So it's not like a bunch of panels that you join together. The whole wall is made off site and then craned into position. And then obviously, last but not least, insulated concrete panels. So you know, not common in housing, but we've done a handful of houses. I quite like it. Superwall, sorry, my mouse is just a bit twitchy, but Superwall, like I was just sort of describing, we've got our internal services cavity, which you can see in here, and then we've got our structural cladding cavity on the outside. So we're not penetrating the wrap. We've got an air tightness layer. So this is really just a sort of a build up on site, utilizing that idea of the Californian corner, but just sort of a way of building up on site. They're trying to achieve a similar thing to an eco panel wall, which is an off-site assembly, which comes in with all the insulation in and the battens on and everything. So all you have to do is put the claddings on. So this is actually a house which Dan built, and it's our first panel house with the eco panel. And this went from sort of a slab on site to roof on in 2.5 days. And so that was great. So nothing gets wet, which is another advantage. And the roof is CLT, and then we insulated on top of the roof. So we ended up with a nice sort of sexy looking timber ceiling and insulating on top, and then there was a metal roof on top of that. So internally, we've got this nice sort of open field, timber fields with some nice sort of high level light. There's a mezzanine in this house, and probably this led us to thinking we can actually use some of these methods to create some quite nice buildings, and so we've done a handful since with panels, and this is another one that we've used eco panel walls, but we've also used CLT for the floor because it needed it was very soft ground and it was a flood management area, so we needed to have a piled floor. We actually used a triple T raft, which is really good in soft ground. And then we've created this sort of hybrid floor with a thin concrete topping on top of the CLT floor. So that was kind of a bit of a breakthrough. So we can have underfloor heating in there, and it works well without the kind of expense of a big concrete floor. Yeah, so I'll just this house, whoopsie daisy. I might just switch to using the arrows, see that's better. Yeah, so this house here actually has CLT walls, and yeah, sorry, my mouse is just a bit sensitive, but so this house here has CLT walls and roof, and it's actually insulated externally with wood fibre insulation. And I'm quite keen on the idea of using natural materials, and wherever possible, getting rid of things like polystyrene foam and petrochemical materials. So yeah, it's this sort of, I don't know if you come across wood fibre insulation, but it's kind of like, imagine it's a bit like sort of Pinex from the land of the giants. And unfortunately, it's not manufactured in New Zealand, so it's something that has to be imported, which we suffer being in this part of the planet, where we're not getting a lot of the good products that they have overseas. So yeah, I guess the key things with whether you're using these sort of systems for your walls or your roof, the key things are to eliminate that thermal, to create a good thermal envelope. That's our #1 priority. And then make it so that it's, eliminating thermal bridges, that it's airtight, that it deals with moisture well, so that we don't get internal moisture problems with the construction. And just, the design flexibility of the systems is really important. So that's, freedom to design the form that you want with the aesthetics that you want. So there's kind of a lot of considerations that all need to come together when you're thinking about sort of what sort of construction system and what sort of panel system. I prefer wall insulation to things like foams, because we're not using distilled dead dinosaurs, we're using natural materials. And yeah, just thinking about the non-toxicity, the health of the building, and also a big thing is eliminating the waste. So with the 10-star home, we had to have less than 10 kilograms per square metre of waste leaving the site. And the panel construction is just kind of the next level in terms of waste reduction. And so I'll just probably hand over to Dan now, and he can talk about the eco panel. And Dan also is the supplier of the European CLT panels as well. So do you want to take the mouse, Dan, and I'll just get you on your first slide. Oh, yeah.
All right, hi all. So as Bob mentioned, we've built several high performance homes, and the first home we did with the panel system was the one that previously showed, and to us it's a no-brainer moving forward. You know, years ago I used to build, you know, standard building code houses, which I don't do anymore, and I refuse to do, just because they are inefficient and no good for the end user as far as health-wise goes. So we got the opportunity to start EcoPanel. It's basically based on 3604 design, but in a panelized system. So the frames come to site, as you see in that first slide there. So we have the insulation already in the wall, with the structure being the plywood skin on the outside. Then we have the external cavity batten, and that just depends on what cladding's going on. So this one was for horizontal cladding, as you see there. No, sorry, that was for a sheet cladding tri-board. So they're all installed on site in the factory, as well as the internal service cavity batten. Oh, there you go. So as you can see there, prefabrication is the future of building. Europe does it on high capacity. Most of the houses come out of factories and just go to site, put up in days. So our panels, we use Nelson LVL pine, LVL framing, comes to the factory all wrapped up, stays dry. We control our waste, so all the offcuts we use for dwangs if needed, and for lifting the panels into place. We've got, as you can see there in that slide there, we've got, we use a combination of Terralana or Knauf insulation being our main ones that we use. We use, oops, this mouse is a bit dodgy. So in the factory, the frames don't get wet. They come to site with the weather-tight and airtight membranes on. They get lifted into place, and we can get the roof on and windows in if we're doing the windows. We did a house, a two-storied house in Sumner in Christchurch. It was about 100 square meters on the floor, each floor, and we got weather-tight windows in 5 days. So as you can see, if you're doing the same thing on site, it would take you approximately 5 to 6 weeks running up and down scaffolding and doing the same thing. Cost neutral compared to on-site construction using the same product. So if you're doing it, standing the frames up and then cutting plywood, nailing that on, going another piece, that's where your labour blows out. So it's very effective that way. Moving on to why it's better with the insulation and the lack of dwangs and stuff on the inside. As you can see there, this is an alteration I did a few years ago, but notice the insulation there is very well damaged by way of just slumping, as well as the subcontractors not taking care and replacing it once they put their pipes in, or even the insulation installers putting the insulation in. So with EcoPanel, the external envelope, whether we're using a 90mm, a 140 or a 200mm stud, there are no dwangs in the middle, so it's a complete insulation from top plate to bottom plate. So lack of dwangs obviously decreases the amount of thermal bridging, and also the airtight membrane just finishes it all off, so the service cavity then goes on the inside. So if you imagine wearing a merino wool jersey out in a southerly wind, it'll keep you warm to a degree, but then as soon as you put a wind jacket on over the top, it stops that air movement going through and improving the jersey underneath. So that's basically what we're trying to achieve there. Moving on. So just to cover it off, so we've got less timber in the wall itself, which means, as Bob mentioned, in the super wall, basically it's the same wall, but it's still prefabricated. So the insulation is uninterrupted. So you can see that in that slide there, the service cavity on the inside. So that's where, well, especially on the external, where you've got a kitchen on the external wall or even a shower, all the wiring and the plumbing goes within that, and then that's insulated as well. You can see in there, we're not quite as close, but the windows there are recessed into the wall, so into the warm part. So that's a key thing as well. Just going on to say again, I guess cost neutral compared to on-site construction using the same thing. So just summarising there, it's a prefabricated, weather-tight, fully insulated wall system. Again, we try and use as much as non-toxic materials locally sourced. The high performance wraps come from Europe, but they're the best ones on the market, so that's what we use. They come to site with the longest wall we've done is a 13-metre wall out of 90mm framing with a service cavity. So we're governed by basically budget on whether a person wants to have a pilot vehicle or the size of the truck, basically. So we're not limited to say 1200 segments of certain other panel suppliers. So we build the walls as you design them, and they just lift into place. So they're very accurate when they come to site. So there's minimal remedial work to be done afterwards. So that's just the way we're doing it moving forward. So all our houses where we can, we will be using the panel system because we find it far superior speed-wise and efficiency-wise as well. So, and that's moving on to the next one there. So,
yeah, thanks, Dan. So that probably is about all that we've got to talk about. This is just a plug for an ADNZ national tour of workshops on regenerative design. I'm doing a talk in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch and Dunedin with Jerome Partington on regenerative design. And if you go to the ADNZ website, you'll see the dates for that. If you're an ADNZ member, it's $25 or $60 for non-members. So that's really sort of like the next level on from sustainability. It's like sustainability is how do we do less harm, and regenerative design is sort of looking at what does good look like instead, and making every building that we design and build add to the planet rather than take away. So anyway, that's another event which is coming up shortly in Christchurch is the Super Home Tours. So last year we had 12 homes and we opened them up for 3 weekends. This year we've got 9 homes and it's just one weekend, 27th, 28th of July. And instead of one annual tour, we're doing 3 tours and also tours in other centres this year. So the tours have been phenomenally popular with 10,000 people visiting the 12 homes over 3 weekends last year. And they're people that are, the majority of these people are either planning on building or built in the process. So if you're from out of town, we've also got 3D virtual tours this year for the first time. So on our website, there'll be Superhome website, there'll be 3D tours. So our goal with that is to embed educational information into those 3D walkthroughs. So that's something to look out for if you don't make it along to Christchurch. But hopefully you'll be in one of the other centres that will be able to take advantage of the tours. So thanks everybody, and maybe we should open it up for questions now.
Yes, thank you very much, Bob and Dan. That was a really useful presentation.
Yeah, thanks guys. It was especially useful to see some real life examples of what isn't done properly and how it could be done better. So I found that really useful. Yeah, so if anyone have any questions.
Yes, we'll switch over and have a look through some of the questions. There's a few that have come through, so I'll just go through them one by one. Bob, I suppose the Super Home tours for July are all on your website, are they?
Yeah, so the all of the homes, the photos and the drawings and information will be uploaded in the next couple of weeks. So but if anyone wants to find out about it before then, they can email me and I can send through. There's actually a magazine article coming out with a 9-page feature on all the homes, and I could probably get that through to people.
Okay, cool. So I'll just read through a question from Jane Martin. Her question was structural implications of proposed framing. Question mark. There are fewer studs, wider spacing, fewer dwangs. How is that stronger?
So, yeah, well, Jib, they've tested it, and I think, you know, they have the Jib Easy Brace system, and I think it's just to do with the use of the angles for joining the walls, which gives it its strength. Also, in terms of the Eco Panel, the whole house is basically plywood, and so you've got two quite complementary things happening. You've got the plywood on the outside and you've got the Jib board on the inside. So in traditional 3604 construction, you know, you're pretty much always relying on the Jib for bracing. And I really view that as sort of like an airbag solution. You know, once you've had your first decent earthquake, then the bracing is compromised. So it's really good to have both external and internal bracing.
Okay.
But you know, for many years we've been doing rigid air barriers as well. You know, before we got onto the better systems.
Right. Moving on to the next question from Ren. Bob, you showed in an earlier slide with a 140 millimeters by plus 70 millimeter framing detail. How do you fix the two framing together? The lining is fixed to the inside framing. Will this affect bracing design for the walls? You want to refer back to
I'm not sure what slide that was, but if it was the JibFix system, like I said, the angles provide the structure. With the internal surfaces cavity, if that's what they're meaning, the strength is pretty much the same according to, you know, testing by Jib. The structural bracing is pretty similar even with an internal cavity.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Ren. We have got a few more going through. Bob, your advanced timber framing system, this is a question from Louisa. Did you have this partially / fully prefabricated off-site? And if so, was it difficult to prescribe anything different to your suppliers?
No, it was super easy, and it was basically just getting the frames delivered to site, slightly different, and it was no problem. The first time we did it, we talked through what we're doing with the council, so it wasn't sort of something that they'd never seen before, and lots of questions. So that's a good idea. But you've also got to talk to your pre-nailer, because otherwise they'll just probably deliver frames the same way. But in terms of off-site, that's the Eco Panel basically.
Yeah. Another question from Louisa is, what is the standard construction R value from an Eco Panel, 90 millimeters width?
Well, we don't do 90. We start with, down here in Christchurch, we start with 140, and then we've also got the extra 45 of the services cavity. So if you add those together, it's up there like 5.1 with the fiberglass, or it's probably about 4.6 with the Terralana wall. But a 90 wall, I don't know what that is because we don't do that, but Dan might know.
Yeah, well, we can use in a 90 mil wall, we use the earth wall 2.8, the 90 mil 2.8 plus the 1.5 50 mil blanket. So yeah, for the 90 mil wall, and then yeah, obviously it gets better as it goes up with the 140.
Okay.
So that, yeah, so
that's 4.3. That's pretty good for a 90 mil wall. Yeah.
So you're getting 135 mils worth of insulation as opposed to standard 90 mil with your dwangs or nogs, depending on what part of the country you're from.
Yeah. Very good. And are these eco panels available nationwide? Mark is asking.
Yes, yeah, well, no, we've got jobs. We've just completed a job in the last 6 months up in Waiheke Island. So if we can get them to Waiheke Island, it was quite a big job. It was a combination with using CLT as well for the floors and the roof structure. So yes, we can get them anywhere pretty much, as long as, depending on access, of course. If it's a big windy road up a hill, then we might have problems. But I guess if you're going to have problems with getting eco panel up there, you'd have problems getting a concrete truck as well. So.
Okay.
So yes, to answer your question.
Yeah. It's also asking what are some design considerations for exposed concrete topping on lightweight floor? Is that something you can answer, Bob?
That's kind of outside my expertise. That's probably an engineer, but I guess yeah, I mean that system that we've used it in 2 or 3 houses now. I think it's what we've found is it's probably better to do a slightly bigger topping than 50, so like a 70 mil topping, and then you get less issues with cracking and the sort of concrete that you can use. But yeah, the sort of finer details of that will come down to what the engineer specifies in terms of the design and concrete.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Nigel Murray's asking what R values for the suggested wall types, but
I think we covered that.
Just covered that one. So hopefully, Nigel, you listened to that.
Yeah, so
also asking about sorry, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say is with eco panel, it's we don't have a set design. Obviously, we have on our website at ecopanel.co.nz. There is some sample wall structures there, the 90, the 140, and the 200 mil wall. You can sort of see the makeup. But we do it to different designs because some architects have different ways they like to do things. So it's basically a bespoke wall. We can basically build it however, as long as it's falls within our design sort of like how we want to make sure it works thermally.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
And there's a few questions around CLT panels. Did I hear mention CLT panels that Dan brought in from overseas?
Yeah. So that house that we showed with the CLT roof, that was Xlam, which is the Nelson made one. And so after we did that, we loved it. It was so successful that we thought, we'd design a whole bunch more houses like that. And then the supply became an issue, the lead times to get the product. So, and we sourced it from Austria, but bizarrely, it actually ended up being less than half the price, even when taking into account the freight. And also, in my view, a nicer product with the different sort of European timbers and things that are available. And then, the insulation is external, so it's really just depends. You can get really good insulation values. Just depends what sort of insulation product you put on the outside and what thickness.
So yeah, like Bob said, the house that he showed in the slide there, they used wood fibre. So from Europe as well, you can use PIR insulation or even polystyrene to a point. So it's just it depends totally on design and preferences really.
Yeah. So Dan can probably talk to this, but we're now doing a house which we did originally specify CLT for a roof, quite a large house, and it's now we've changed that to glulam, which is basically, it's the same thing, but just with all of the timbers going in the same direction. And you're able to get a slightly thinner, stronger panel, and it's actually cheaper again, which is awesome.
So basically liking it if you've got a piece of LVL timber framing, it's the difference between lying on its flat and then lying on its edge. So the CLT being lying on its flat and the glulam standing on its edge, so it obviously has more strength being on its edge.
Right. And someone else is asking what treatment is required for CLT.
Well, with it all depends on the location of where it is.
Yeah, I think
A couple of
for
these jobs. Yeah. So the Austrian factory, they don't treat their timber in site, because they have to, if they treat it, then they've got to get rid of all the waste, and they have a pretty much a zero waste policy there. They transport out more energy than they actually use, so they're very, very green in that sense. But New Zealand is probably one of the only places that they send the CLT or the glulam to that needs treatment. So what we've come across is there are some spray-on treatments, or that we can supply locally for that to bring it up to the treatment required for the location of where it is. So
yeah, it has been a question, but there are ways around that. And the other thing is they're looking at the idea of, with the CLT, having a lamination of larch on the outside, which doesn't need treatment. Larch, yeah. So the main material is spruce, and then the last layer being larch. It provides the resilience without the required treatment.
Has the similar qualities to Douglas fir.
Yeah. So yeah, it is a question, but it's something that hasn't held us back. And yeah, but if you're using it for the first time with, say, one of the provincial councils or something, they might have a question about that.
okay. Moving on to waste. There's a question from Derek on stormwater and rainwater disposal. On the boathouse, the photos looked like they were either no gutters or concealed gutters.
Yeah, the gutters are at the bottom, so basically there's a channel at the floor level. So the rainwater is collected at the bottom of the wall rather than at the roof.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And then we've got another question from Jane. Really interesting in the approach. Thanks for sharing these details with us. Is there a version of insulated panel that could be retrofit on existing interior board siding to benefit uninsulated timber buildings?
Good question. I don't see why not. And I think, you know, renovating our existing building stock is really important. We're not going to sort of solve the issues of our poor housing and mitigating climate change just by building better new homes. We need to upgrade our existing and do a proper job with it.
Yeah.
A lot of people, you know, they put some bats in the roof and under the floor, and the walls and the windows are too hard, and they think, yep, done that, but they're actually kidding themselves. We actually need to do things properly.
Agree. Marcus Richardson, is there a program in place to educate developers who are involved in medium density housing?
Yeah, it's called the super homework.
Yeah, and to add, what we could also do is, obviously, when we do these webinars, we focus on what we get from feedback in terms of what people want, and you know, if there are specific things that that people like to be educated on, we can definitely run these as part of the webinars. And also, if there's anything more that wouldn't fit into a 1 hour webinar, the Green Building Council can do a 1-day training or half-day training or something like that, shouldn't we?
Okay, well, that's something for us to look at, and Marcus will let you know if we hear of any other training. We still have some time, but I think that's most of the questions. I had a message from Elrond just to point out that the Passive House Open Days are also coming up for those of you in, actually it's this Friday, Saturday and Sunday, if I get this right. 14 homes across New Zealand, 8 in the South Island, 6 in the North Island, 6 in Christchurch alone, finished, some unfinished. So plenty of examples to look up for you guys in the next couple of months. And our event side, the work we're building, we're coming up in September then. So it looks like we've been through all of the questions. So I'll finish off with just letting you know that we will send through the presentation slides, and Bob, I think, and Dan, you guys will be more than happy to answer any other questions if people have any. But that was a really useful session, so thank you so much for your time. And thanks everyone for joining in today. I'll just point out where our next event is in Waikato on the 1st of August. So for those of you in Hamilton, along to our green speak. And we also run a Homestar course with a lot of inquiries in the last 3 months, and we'll be down in Christchurch at the end of August. We'll also run a session in Wellington on the 15th of August, and then our regular training up in Auckland on the 11th to 12th and September. So if you are in one of those regions and want to learn more about Homestar, then come along to that. We usually also list the recorded webinars on our video library, so jump on our website, www.thegbc.org.nz/online videos. You can rewatch any of those webinars from the past year or two. And yeah, just like Danny mentioned, it is really useful just to receive your feedback. So as soon as I close this webinar, there'll be a quick survey to so if you have time to do that, that would be great. I just say that the presentations better for the future, to suit the crowd. And yeah, we hope to see you all next time. Thanks very much for tuning in, and thanks again, Dan and Bob. I'll leave you to have some lunch now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.